The following content is a narrated account intended for storytelling and discussion.
Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When I landed in Colorado after months abroad, I expected silence, pine trees, and the untouched sanctuary I called home. Instead, I found a mansion, towering, illegal, and smack in the middle of my land. Someone had stolen my ground, and they were about to regret it. I had been away for 3 long months, buried under a whirlwind of meetings and late-night negotiations in Europe, but as my plane touched down in Colorado Springs, I could already picture the quiet piece of land waiting for me back home. 12 acres of raw, untouched terrain, nestled against the foothills and stretching into a tangle of pine and scrub oak, had always been my sanctuary. It wasn't just land to me. It was the place I'd bought with every intention of building a retreat, far from the noise of the city, and most importantly, far from the clutches of any homeowners association. Out there, the world felt still, untouched, mine. As I drove up the winding gravel road in my pickup, something strange hit me before I even reached the property line. There was movement on the horizon where there shouldn't be any. Tall structures, cranes, scaffolding, all of it cutting into the skyline like an eyesore. I slowed down, gripping the steering wheel tighter, my heart picking up speed. For a split second, I wondered if I'd turned down the wrong road. But then I saw the old wooden fence post that marked my land, the one I'd sunk into the earth myself 2 summers ago. I pulled up to the edge of my property, and my jaw literally dropped. Right there, standing where I'd once walked with my boots crunching over sagebrush and wild grass, was a massive 3-story house, a monstrosity of gray concrete, steel beams, and half-finished windows. It looked like a luxury mountain chalet, the kind of house that screamed excess and had probably cost $500,000 already, and it was sitting dead center on my land. My land. I killed the engine, stepped out, and just stood there for a moment, staring like some idiot who couldn't quite comprehend the reality of what I was seeing. Trucks were parked in a rough circle around the house. A cement mixer was rumbling somewhere behind the structure. There were men in hard hats moving up and down scaffolding, carrying planks and buckets, hammering like they had every right to be there. "What the hell?" I muttered under my breath, walking toward the open gate. A cheap white sign hung from the chain-link fence that had been thrown up around the property. It read, "Private Project, property of HOA, Clearwater Hills. No trespassing." That one line lit a fuse inside me. Clearwater Hills was the development a couple of miles down the valley, an HOA community I deliberately avoided like the plague when I was looking for land. My 12 acres had nothing to do with them. We weren't even on the same grid. How in God's name had they put their hands on my property? I pushed through the gate, ignoring the stares of a few workers. "Hey, who's in charge here?" I barked. A man covered in sawdust pointed toward a black SUV parked near the house. The door swung open, and out stepped a woman in her 50s, dressed like she was heading to a board meeting instead of a construction site. Perfectly tailored blazer, pearls, blonde bob so sharp it could cut glass. She had that aura of self-appointed authority, the kind that always makes my skin crawl. "Can I help you?" she said, not even bothering to hide the annoyance in her voice. "Yeah," I replied, my voice flat. "I own this land, and I'd like to know what the hell you think you're doing here." Her eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me, this is HOA property. Clearwater Hills acquired this parcel through a deal with the county. You're trespassing." I laughed, though it came out darker than I intended. "Trespassing? Lady, I have the deed, the surveys, the whole damn file that says otherwise. You've got about 5 seconds to explain how a house ended up on my dirt." She crossed her arms, her pearls glinting in the sun. "I don't need to explain anything to you. We've been planning this development for over a year, and everything is legally approved. If you don't leave, I'll call the police and have you removed." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Do it. Call them." I'd love to have this conversation with an officer standing here while I show him the papers that prove this land is mine. Her eyes narrowed. "You don't scare me. People like you never win these fights." "People like me?" I echoed with a grin. "You don't even know who you're dealing with." For a moment, we stared each other down, and I could feel the workers behind me slowing their pace, watching like it was some live reality show. Finally, I turned on my heel, pulled out my phone, and started snapping pictures. The house, the fence, her smug face. She shouted something about calling the HOA lawyers, but I didn't care. I walked back to my truck, every step fueled by a growing storm inside me. This wasn't some misunderstanding with boundary lines. No, this was deliberate. Someone had decided my land was fair game just because it sat empty for a while. Someone had taken a gamble, thinking I'd be too slow, too quiet, or too absent to fight back. By the time I started the engine, I already knew what I had to do. Tomorrow morning, I was going to the county recorder's office. I was going to dig up every official record, every map, every scrap of paper that screamed this land belonged to me. And then I was going to find out who the hell this Karen from hell really was, and make her regret ever stepping foot on my property. The next morning, I was already in my truck before sunrise, a thermos of black coffee on the passenger seat, and a storm of thoughts running through my head. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that monstrous house eating up my land like a parasite. The image of that smug woman, Karen, she had introduced herself with that self-important tone, kept replaying in my mind. She had looked at me as if I were some stray dog who wandered into her gated kingdom. That wasn't going to fly. By 8 in the morning, I was standing in the lobby of the El Paso County Recorder's office, holding a folder stuffed with every document I could find from when I bought the land 4 years ago. The clerk, a polite man with a receding hairline and a pair of glasses perched on his nose, typed my name into the system. Within minutes, he pulled up the digital record and printed out a copy of the current property deed. "Mr. Ferguson," he said, handing me the document. "According to our records, this parcel belongs to you outright. There's no record of any transfer, sale, or lien. Nobody but you has a legal claim to this property." "Not Clearwater Hills HOA?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He gave me a blank look. "Absolutely not. This land isn't even within their jurisdiction. In fact, they'd have no legal authority over this parcel whatsoever." I felt my jaw tighten. So this wasn't some clerical error. This was Karen lying through her teeth, pretending to own something that never belonged to her. I asked for copies of the deed, the plat map, and any official zoning information for my property. I wanted a mountain of paper proof. Before leaving, I also requested a statement confirming that no construction permits had been issued for any project on my land. The clerk raised an eyebrow when I told him someone had already poured concrete and built a house there. "They built what?" he said. "Without permits? That's not just illegal, that's insane." "You're telling me," I muttered. After leaving the office, I called a land surveyor I'd worked with years ago when I first bought the property. By late afternoon, a pair of surveyors met me on site. They brought their GPS equipment and started marking the exact boundaries of my lot. I stayed close, watching them work, and it didn't take long to confirm what I feared. "Mr. Ferguson," one of them said, looking over his equipment, "the house is smack in the middle of your property line, not even close to the edge. Whoever started this build didn't just make a small mistake. They're deep into your land." I laughed, though it wasn't from humor. "Deep into my land? That's an understatement. They're camping out on my future living room." I asked them to document everything with photos and a detailed report. This wasn't going to end with a handshake and an apology. By evening, I decided to confront the people behind this circus. I called the number posted on the sign by the gate, the construction company hired by Clearwater Hills HOA. A gruff voice answered. "This is Tom Ferguson," I said, keeping my tone steady. "I'm the owner of the land you're building on." There was silence for a moment before the man responded. "We've got a contract with HOA Clearwater Hills. They gave us all the paperwork. If there's an issue, you'll have to take it up with them." "Trust me," I said. "I will." I knew I needed official backup. That night, I called the sheriff's department. When the deputy arrived, I showed him my documents and photos of the house. He took a long look, whistled low, and said, "You've got yourself a mess here, sir, but this is technically a civil matter. We can't shut down construction unless there's a court order." "You're telling me someone can just throw up a house on my property and I have to go beg a judge to stop it?" I asked. "That's how it works," the deputy said with a shrug. "You'll need to file a lawsuit for trespass and illegal construction. Until then, we can't intervene." It felt like a punch to the gut, but if Karen thought I was going to roll over, she had another thing coming. Later that night, as I parked my truck, I noticed a strange number calling me. When I answered, a male voice spoke, low and threatening. "Stay out of this. That land isn't yours anymore. You start a fight, you'll regret it." I froze, gripping the phone tighter. Who the hell is this? But the line went dead. That was it. The final straw. I wasn't just dealing with arrogance, I was dealing with criminals. The next morning, I'd start putting together everything I needed for a lawsuit. And Karen, she'd wish she never tried to play queen of my land. The next day, I drove straight back to the property with a fresh stack of documents under my arm. I wasn't in the mood for polite conversations or endless back and forth. This time, I wanted answers, and I wanted Karen to hear them loud and clear. The house looked even bigger than I remembered, a hulking fortress of arrogance standing in the middle of my land. Construction was still buzzing, workers hammering, a truck unloading lumber. Nobody had any idea they were about to get caught in the middle of a brewing storm. I pulled up near the temporary gate and stepped out, holding my folder like a weapon. A few of the workers paused when they saw me, clearly recognizing the guy who had caused a scene a couple of days ago. One of them muttered something to another and nodded toward the SUV parked under a makeshift canopy. Right on cue, the door opened, and out came Karen, dressed in another immaculate suit, like she'd just stepped off a glossy HOA magazine cover. "Oh, it's you again," she said, her voice dripping with irritation. "Didn't I tell you this isn't your land?" I didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Karen, I have the deed right here. County records, official survey, the whole deal. You're building on my property. Every beam, every nail, every brick here. All of it is sitting on land I legally own." She folded her arms and smirked like I'd just told her the earth was flat. "I don't care what papers you brought. We purchased this land through the county. The deal was done months ago." "Funny," I said, stepping closer, because I just left the recorder's office and they confirmed that no such deal ever happened. "You're trespassing. You and every single person working here." The workers, who had been watching from a distance, shifted uncomfortably. One of them whispered to another, and I could see doubt flicker across their faces. Karen noticed it too and quickly raised her voice. "Don't listen to him. He's some con artist trying to claim property that doesn't belong to him. We have all the legal rights we need." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures, making sure to get close-ups of her, the construction site, and every single Clearwater Hills sign plastered on the fence. "Keep talking, Karen. This will look great in court." "You're not going to scare me," she snapped. "Do you know who I am?" "Oh, I know exactly who you are," I said with a grin. "The woman who's about to be on the wrong side of a massive lawsuit." Her face turned red, but she held her ground. "Get off this property or I'll have you arrested for harassment." I laughed darkly. "Good luck with that. Want me to call the sheriff myself? Let's see who they side with when I show them my deed." Before she could respond, I turned to the workers and raised my voice. "Just so you all know, you're building on land that doesn't belong to this woman or her HOA. If you keep working here after today, you might get dragged into this lawsuit too. You think Clearwater Hills is going to cover your legal bills? Think again." The silence that followed told me they were listening. I saw one of them pull out his phone and start making a call, probably to his boss. Karen's eyes narrowed into slits. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Oh, I know it's not over," I replied, "but I guarantee you won't like how it ends." I turned and walked back to my truck, but before I climbed in, I noticed a familiar figure standing near the edge of the lot. It was Bob, the old farmer who lived half a mile down the road. He waved me over. "Tom," he said as I approached, "I've been waiting to talk to you. That lady's been sniffing around here for months. She told everyone you'd abandoned the land and that the HOA was taking it over. I told her she was full of it, but she just waved some papers and told the workers the county gave her the green light." "She's lying," I said flatly. "Of course she is," Bob replied. "I don't trust her as far as I can throw her. And I'll tell you something else. I heard her bragging to someone about how you were out of the picture for good. She thought you weren't coming back." That was the final nail in the coffin for me. Karen hadn't made some innocent mistake. She'd orchestrated this whole thing because she assumed no one would challenge her. Well, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I thanked Bob and promised him I'd set things straight. Back in my truck, I started dialing my lawyer's number. This wasn't going to be a conversation anymore. This was war. By the next morning, I had a plan. I spent half the night scanning every document I owned. My deed, the survey map, the tax receipts, everything that tied my name to those 12 acres. Then I called Jennifer Lang, an attorney I'd worked with years ago when I was buying commercial property. Jennifer had the reputation of a wolf in a silk blouse, someone who'd happily dismantle anyone foolish enough to test her patience. When I explained the situation, she didn't even hesitate. Tom, this is textbook property invasion. We'll file a cease and desist immediately, and I'll prepare a trespassing and illegal construction claim. You need to gather all evidence. Photos, survey reports, witness statements, everything. Already done, I said. I have enough pictures of that damn house to start a real estate brochure. Good, she replied. Email them to me. I'll have papers drafted by noon. And Tom, don't set foot on that site again without me or law enforcement. People like this, they get nasty when cornered. I wasn't surprised. Karen didn't strike me as someone who handled losing well. By noon, Jennifer had sent me a formal letter addressed to the Clearwater Hills HOA and specifically to President Karen Bliss, ordering them to halt all construction immediately or face legal action. We even had it delivered by a process server just to make the point loud and clear. I pictured Karen's face when she opened that envelope, probably red enough to match a fire hydrant. Later that day, I drove out to the property with my surveyor's final report in hand. The numbers were undeniable. The new house stood dead center on my land, about as subtle as a tank parked in your driveway. I wanted the construction crew to see me there, to understand they weren't going to skate by without consequences. As I pulled up, I saw fewer workers than before. Clearly, the rumors were starting to spread. Some of them glanced at me nervously, like they were wondering whose side they'd accidentally signed up for. Karen, however, was waiting for me at the gate. She was dressed in a white blazer this time, as if wearing a different color would somehow make her more legitimate. I received your so-called letter, she said, waving a piece of paper in the air like it was infected. Do you really think you can bully me with legal threats? Not a threat, I said evenly, stepping closer. A promise. You've got until the court date to clear out. Otherwise, every penny you've sunk into this illegal palace goes straight down the drain. Her eyes flashed with fury. You're bluffing. The HOA will back me. We have lawyers, real lawyers, who don't scare easily. You mean the same lawyers who signed off on this? I asked, holding up my survey report, because I've got county records, GPS data, and satellite images proving this is my land. Do your lawyers like dealing with criminal fraud? Because that's exactly where this is heading. For a moment, her confidence cracked. Just a flicker, but I saw it. She quickly turned her attention to the workers who had stopped hammering to watch us. Don't listen to him, she snapped. Keep working. This is our project. You're all being paid to do a job. One of the workers, a foreman by the look of him, stepped forward. Ma'am, with all due respect, if this guy owns the land, we can't. You will, she barked. Or you won't see another dime. I caught his eye and said, do yourself a favor, get a copy of your contract. Make sure she can actually pay you if this project gets shut down. Because once this hits court, I'm dragging every name I find on that contract into the lawsuit. The man looked uneasy and muttered something to his crew. A few of them started packing up their tools. Karen's face turned beet red. You're finished, Ferguson. You hear me? I will ruin you in court. You'll wish you never bought this land. Funny, I said, smirking. I was about to say the same thing to you. That evening, Jennifer and I sat down to finalize the lawsuit. We weren't just filing for trespass. We were going after every dollar they'd spent building that monstrosity. The court paperwork alone felt like a small novel. When Jennifer was done, she looked up from her laptop and said, She's going to fight like hell. Be ready. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about Karen's face when I'd mentioned fraud. Oh, I'm ready. Let's see how tough she is when a judge tells her to tear down that house. The preliminary hearing was set for a Thursday morning, and I made sure to arrive early with Jennifer. She was dressed in her usual sharp navy suit, the kind that radiated quiet confidence, while I wore a clean button-down and boots that still had a trace of dust from my land. Karen showed up 20 minutes late, striding in like she owned the place, with 2 lawyers in tow. She didn't even look at me, but I could see the smug curve of her lips when she whispered something to her attorneys. She probably thought this was just a formality before she steamrolled me. The judge was a tall man with a calm, measured tone. Let's get to the point, he said after we'd all sat down. Mr. Ferguson claims that construction is happening on his property without his consent. Mrs. Bliss, do you dispute his ownership? Karen's lawyer stood up, shuffling some papers. Your Honor, the HOA believes that this land was acquired through a deal with the county. We have documents. Show them, the judge interrupted. The lawyer handed over a folder. Jennifer leaned in close to me as the judge flipped through the pages. They're bluffing, she murmured. I can smell the desperation. She was right. The judge's expression hardened after just a few pages. Mrs. Bliss, he said, these documents lack proper county seals and signatures. "Where did you get these?" Karen, who had been sitting like a queen on a throne, suddenly faltered. "They're official," she insisted. "Our HOA was told." "By who?" the judge asked sharply. "Because the county records show no transfer of ownership. As of this moment, this land belongs to Mr. Ferguson. Until this dispute is resolved, all construction on the site is to cease immediately." The words hit the room like a hammer. Karen's face twisted, and I could practically hear her teeth grinding. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "Do you have any idea how much we've invested in this project?" "Ma'am," the judge said, clearly losing patience, "if you've built on land you don't own, that's your problem. You should have verified your claim before breaking ground. Consider this your warning. Any further activity will be treated as trespassing." Karen tried to argue, but her lawyers hushed her. Jennifer smirked at me, whispering, "Round 1 to us." After the hearing, we stepped outside, and I called my surveyor to give him the good news. While I was talking, Karen stormed out of the courthouse, her heels clicking like gunfire. "You think you've won?" she hissed at me. "This isn't over. I'll file a counterclaim so fast your head will spin." I raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead, Karen. Maybe bring real documents next time instead of the ones you printed off your HOA's copier." Her cheeks flushed bright red, but she didn't respond. Instead, she shoved past me and marched toward her car. Later that day, I visited the property with Jennifer and my surveyor to post a big, bold sign on the gate. "Stop work order, private property, trespassers will be prosecuted." It felt like planting a flag after winning a battle. The workers were gone, leaving behind stacks of materials and an eerie silence. The half-finished house looked less like a trophy and more like a colossal mistake. That evening, Bob, the farmer, stopped by my truck while I was checking the site. "Heard you smacked her down in court," he said with a grin. "Good. That woman's been throwing her weight around this valley for too long." "Thanks, Bob," I replied, "but something tells me she's not done yet." He nodded gravely. "Oh, she's not the type to quit. Watch your back." Karen's promise to fight back didn't take long to materialize. Within a week, Jennifer forwarded me a copy of the counterclaim Karen had filed. It was a masterpiece of delusion. She was demanding that the court recognize the house as a good-faith acquisition, claiming I had abandoned the land and that the HOA had invested community resources into developing it. She even had the nerve to accuse me of harassment for interfering with a public improvement project. I almost laughed, but Jennifer's face was deadly serious when we sat down to review it. "She's trying to throw mud at the wall to see what sticks." Jennifer said, "None of this will hold up, but we have to respond aggressively. We'll expand our claim: trespass, illegal construction, property damage, emotional distress. And we're adding punitive damages." "I like the sound of that," I said. "Let's make her regret picking this fight." While Jennifer prepared the next set of filings, I turned my attention to the construction site. The court order had stopped the work, but I didn't trust Karen not to sneak her crew back in. I installed new motion-activated cameras around the perimeter and wired them to send footage directly to my phone. Within 2 days, my paranoia was justified. At 2 in the morning, a pickup truck rolled up to the gate, and a couple of guys tried to remove the "Stop Work" sign. I called the sheriff's department, and by the time deputies arrived, the truck was gone. But the camera footage was crystal clear. Jennifer was delighted when I sent her the video. "This goes straight into evidence," she said. "It proves ongoing trespass." Things escalated fast after that. Karen started a smear campaign in the Clearwater Hills community. Flyers showed up on mailboxes calling me a selfish outsider who was blocking progress and depriving the neighborhood of a valuable community center. She even went on the local HOA Facebook page, posting photos of the half-finished house with captions like, "This could have been a beautiful amenity for our families, but one man's greed is stopping it." I decided to go public with my side of the story. I called a friend who worked at the local paper and gave them everything. Photos of the land, proof of ownership, the court filings, even the video of Karen's goons messing with my sign. Within days, an article hit the front page. "Private landowner battles HOA over unauthorized mansion build." The comments section exploded, and for once, people weren't buying Karen's nonsense. Some residents of Clearwater Hills even reached out to me directly, saying they were tired of her power trips and would be willing to testify about her behavior. One evening, as I was checking the property, I noticed a construction crew parked at the edge of the road, their trucks idling like they weren't sure whether to come in or turn back. I walked over, holding my phone like I was ready to record every second. "You guys here to work on this site?" I asked. The foreman, the same guy I'd seen before, looked uneasy. "We got a call from Karen," he said. "But, we're not touching anything until this is cleared up. We don't want to get sued." "Good choice," I said, handing him one of Jennifer's business cards. "If she tries to stiff you for the money she owes, give this number a call." By the time they left, I felt like I'd finally cracked the wall Karen was hiding behind. The workers weren't loyal to her, just the paycheck. And the more this dragged out, the more isolated she'd become. Still, I wasn't letting my guard down. Every day, I documented everything. New photos, aerial drone shots of the property, and updates from Bob, who had become my unofficial lookout. He told me Karen had been driving by the site late at night, probably to make sure I wasn't tearing down her palace. "She's losing it," Bob said one evening as we stood by the fence. "I heard her screaming at some of the HOA board members. Guess they're starting to realize this mess could cost them big time." "They're right," I said, staring at the half-built house. "This is going to cost them more than they ever imagined." The full trial began on a cool Monday morning, and by then, the tension between me and Karen had become the stuff of local gossip. The courthouse lobby buzzed with curiosity. A few reporters from the local news had even shown up, no doubt drawn in by the absurdity of an HOA president building a mansion on someone else's land. Jennifer walked beside me, cool and composed, while Karen stormed in with her lawyers, looking like she had swallowed a lemon for breakfast. She had swapped her blazer for an all-black ensemble, which I suppose was her way of looking serious and wronged. It didn't work. She just looked furious. The first day was all about evidence, and Jennifer came prepared like she was going into battle. She'd laid out every deed, survey, drone shot, and camera recording we had collected. "Your Honor," she said, with that calm, confident voice of hers, "this isn't a question of confusion. This is a case of deliberate trespass and fraudulent behavior. Mrs. Bliss acted as though this property were her own, despite every piece of evidence showing otherwise." Karen's lawyer tried to argue that the HOA had acted in good faith and that the construction was a community project meant for the benefit of all. Resident Jennifer didn't even flinch. "Good faith?" she repeated, holding up a blown-up photo of the forged county paperwork Karen had submitted to the contractors. "Does this look like good faith to you, Your Honor? This document is fake. Our handwriting analyst and county officials have confirmed the signature of the supposed clerk doesn't match any record in their files. It's a forgery." The judge leaned forward, frowning at the document. Karen shifted in her seat, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Her attorney stammered something about miscommunication, but it was already falling apart. When the foreman of the construction crew took the stand, things got even worse for Karen. "We were told by Mrs. Bliss that the land had been purchased by Clearwater Hills HOA, he said. "She gave us copies of what she claimed were official documents. We trusted her. Why would we think she'd lie about something like this? But once Mr. Ferguson came forward and showed us his deed, we realized something wasn't right." The second day of the trial brought out more surprises. Bob, the farmer, testified with the blunt honesty of someone who didn't give a damn about pleasantries. "I told that woman she had no right to be there," he said, pointing straight at Karen, but she just laughed and said the previous owner was gone. Well, guess what? He ain't gone. He's standing right there. Karen's counterclaim crumbled piece by piece. When Jennifer cross-examined her, it was like watching a cat play with a mouse. "Mrs. Bliss, did you or did you not instruct contractors to build on Mr. Ferguson's land without verifying legal ownership?" "I believed," Karen began. "Yes or no, Mrs. Bliss?" Karen's lips tightened. "Yes." The room went quiet. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered the threats, the lies, and the smug way she'd told me I'd never win. Not today. By the third day, it was obvious how this would end. The judge didn't just side with me. He delivered a ruling that hit Karen and her HOA like a wrecking ball. This court finds that Mrs. Bliss and the Clearwater Hills Homeowners Association acted negligently and unlawfully, he declared. The structure on Mr. Ferguson's property is to be removed at the HOA's expense, and damages in the amount of $312,000 are awarded to the plaintiff, Karen's face drained of color. Her lawyers looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. Jennifer smiled like a shark who had just finished a satisfying meal, but the fireworks weren't over yet. As we left the courthouse, two detectives approached Karen and her attorneys. I stopped dead in my tracks as I heard one of them say, Karen Bliss, you're under arrest for forging official documents and filing fraudulent construction permits. The click of the handcuffs was like music to my ears. The morning after the verdict, I drove out to my land and parked at the edge of the gravel road, just beyond the chain-link fence that still surrounded the half-finished mansion. A cold wind swept down from the mountains, rattling loose sheets of plastic that flapped like surrender flags around the skeletal structure. It was eerily quiet now. No workers, no rumbling cement mixers, just the hollow echo of what Karen had tried to claim as her kingdom. A demolition crew was waiting for me. I had hired them to carry out the court order as soon as the ink was dry on the ruling. A sheriff's deputy was present to oversee everything, his cruiser parked nearby with its lights off, but its presence unmistakable. The deputy handed me a clipboard and asked me to sign off on the removal order. I did so with a sense of grim satisfaction. As the crew rolled in with heavy equipment, I couldn't help but recall the smug confidence on Karen's face when I first confronted her. Now she was sitting in a county jail cell awaiting a fraud hearing, her empire of HOA politics crumbling faster than the walls of this house were about to. The first swing of the excavator's arm was almost ceremonial. It slammed into one of the wooden frames with a deafening crack, splintering beams and sending debris tumbling into the dirt. I stood there with my arms crossed, watching as the mansion came down piece by piece. There was something cathartic about seeing that oversized monument to arrogance reduced to rubble. Every nail and plank that hit the ground felt like a step closer to reclaiming what was rightfully mine. By noon, the house was half gone and I stepped aside to let a dump truck pass, loaded with broken concrete and twisted rebar. The demolition foreman, a sturdy guy with a sunburned neck, came over to me during a break. "I've been doing this job for over 20 years, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But I've never seen anything like this. Who builds a damn mansion without making sure they own the land?" "Someone who thinks rules don't apply to them," I said. The next few days were a blur of cleanup. The debris was hauled off, the ground was leveled, and by the end of the week, the land looked raw and untouched again, like the whole nightmare had been erased. I had new fencing installed with clear, bold signs that read, "Private property, no trespassing." This time, there would be no confusion. Meanwhile, the fallout from Karen's arrest was turning into a spectacle of its own. The local news had latched onto the story, airing segments about HOA corruption and interviewing Clearwater Hills residents who admitted they had long suspected Karen of shady dealings. Within 2 weeks, the HOA board voted to remove her permanently, but the damage was done. Membership numbers plummeted as residents opted out, unwilling to pay fees to an organization that had become a national punchline. Jennifer called me one evening with an update. "The settlement check from the HOA will clear next week," she said. "That'll cover all your legal expenses, the survey costs, and then some." "I'd call this a win, Tom." "Yeah," I said, looking out at the wide open land as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple. "Feels like one." I didn't hold on to the property much longer. A developer from Denver made me an offer, nearly triple what I'd originally paid. After what I'd been through, it felt like the universe was telling me to cash out and start fresh. So I did. I took that money and bought a new piece of land even farther into the mountains. Quiet, remote, and far from any HOA nonsense. One evening, as I sat on my new porch with a beer in hand, I thought about Karen. I wondered if she was still blaming me for everything that had gone wrong, even though it was her arrogance that built her own downfall brick by brick. In the end, I didn't need revenge beyond what had already happened. Watching her empire fall apart had been enough, and as the sun set over the peaks, I realized I'd built something Karen could never take from me: peace.
This story does not intend to judge any individuals involved.